there was a moment, it seems like that you made a decision to go into the real estate market and start developing these resorts and this hospitality.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, Gate really began diversifying in the 70s during the oil crisis. There was an oil embargo and high interest rates. It was a bad time. And we started spreading out. We moved into construction materials, and we also moved into real estate development. So a lot of the premier office parks in this community have been developed by Gate Petroleum. That includes Deerwood Center, South Point Office Park, Deerwood Park. Those are major job hubs for those people who are not familiar with this area. That's a lot of where the growth has occurred in the office complexes to the south of town, between really the city and the beach. So we've been successful here developing land, and now we're working on another project in St. Johns County, just to the south of us, which is primarily retail. So the real estate market here has been very steady and very strong, but very measured. It hasn't been explosive, and I think that's a huge advantage in that we have been able to keep up with the growth. The other thing I would say too is we live better here. As you know, if you've experienced it, as someone who's moved here, very few folks recognize we have the largest park system in the United States of America in Duval County. The active parks and passive parks, we've set aside a lot of land as really a growth management strategy. Look, you don't have to provide the infrastructure and the roads and the schools and the fire stations, and if you have passive parks. So we have thousands and thousands of acres, and you combine that with the miles and miles of waterway, both the Atlantic Ocean. We have some of the finest beaches, I think, on the East Coast, and then you combine the St. Johns River. So we live better here. But there's another structural advantage that I think that is not well known, and I think that enables this region to grow smartly. We have a very different form of government in Duval County than most places in the country, in that our city and county is actually consolidated. That affords us the ability to really move behind one vision and implement and execute on vision. The mayor is a strong mayor form of government. The mayor's office has a lot of power here. Everyone in the government works for the mayor. The mayor really serves as the CEO. We don't have the typical inter-county conflicts, intergovernment agency conflicts. You've got a county that's 800 square miles with one person in charge. So when we're looking at an economic opportunity, particularly recruiting businesses here, we speak with one voice, and we're able to move mountains because of the way we're structured. And I think one of the dividends of having a consolidated government is that our tax base is very competitive. We have one of the lowest tax burdens of any city in America. You already have Florida that has no income tax, but then you put on top of that the fact that we've got very low ad valorem taxes, which is really, that's our property tax rate, very low fees. So we have a lot of tax advantages that make us a very, very attractive region in the way that we govern ourselves. So I would say that for anyone who's looking to relocate or to build a business here, that's really important.
You bring up a great point, John, and a lot of our audience here is either rental property owners or soon-to-be rental property owners, and when we're talking about producing cash flow, property taxes make a big deal. I never thought about the relationship between consolidated government and basically a lack of redundancy of offices,
right?
Really kind of limiting the overhead. So that's really incredible. And, the consolidated government for me was such an interesting thing as I looked a little bit more into it as I was researching for our show today. I learned that I think we went consolidated back in maybe the late 60s, I think it was.
1968. Mm-hmm.
And there was a real push, from what I understand, and feel free to clue me in here, but there was a real push to potentially have more consolidated governments than that. I think it was on the ballot for Tampa, and it didn't go through, and a couple other major cities.
Right.
But I think there's only maybe 10 major cities out there now.
Not many. Yeah. And I don't think you're going to see that change, because when you consolidate, you're asking elected officials to give up power. The only reason it works here, and I think it's probably true in most places, is we were in a state of disaster. Our schools were discredited. They were hauling elected officials to jail every day, being indicted for fraud and corruption. We were literally dumping raw sewage into the river. There were a lot of bad things happening, and I think that the citizenry, led by our local paper, the Times-Union, basically revolted, and they created an atmosphere. They said, look, we need to stop doing everything we've been doing, and reimagine how we govern ourselves. And that was so. It really does take a crisis to cause people to embrace a seismic shift in governance. So I don't think you'll see it in many places. But I will tell you, our form of government is the envy of, I think, any city in America. having a strong mayor that is one voice, one call. You know, if you need to do a deal, if you need to get something shaken up or shaken loose, whatever it may be, it makes a huge difference. And you really can't discount that, particularly as you look at, we compete economically with a lot of regions in the Southeast. The bureaucracy that you go through in other regions, when you got to get the county on the same board with the city, and who's going to pay the incentives, and who's going to be the true beneficiary, and arguing over who the true beneficiary is. You know, a lot of cities argue over where the convention center goes. So we don't have that here. And in addition to the low tax burden, it's just a very efficient way to govern. And that does parlay into having a more competitive economy.
Could we talk a little bit more about maybe some of the other effects of a consolidated government, specifically about downtown Jacksonville? It's something that, you know,
Right.
JWB is making a lot of news with our investments. There's a lot of really positive momentum for downtown.
Right.
Can you talk about maybe how downtown, you know, why it's taken so long for downtown
Right.
to, you know,
Right.
fulfill our potential, and maybe how consolidated government kind of led to that?
Yeah. So I would say this. I think, you know, when you look at downtown Jacksonville, you are kind of taken aback by why hasn't it moved forward as fast as other downtowns around the region? And as mayor, I was very frustrated by this reality. And we spent a lot of time studying different communities and what they did that really mobilized their city. I would say if there is one downside to consolidation, and it's not perfect, but I think there are far more benefits than liabilities, is that downtown kind of lost its voice. You know, we had tremendous growth in the suburbs, and they had a lot of needs in these suburbs. You had folks leaving downtown. No one was living downtown. And we had a lot of jobs leaving downtown too. They went to the south side. So there wasn't the advocacy that you would have in other parts of the town. So as you're competing for resources, when you're assembling the city budget, the county budget, downtown often would get sidetracked. Having said that, we are a strong mayor form of government, and almost every mayor since consolidation has been deeply committed to downtown. And we have seen significant capital investment. We have one of the most beautiful libraries in the Southeast. It's a new Robert Stern design building. We've got a great arena, a nice ballpark, a great stadium for the NFL. So, you know, we have river walks on both North and South Bank downtown. So I think we have been able to invest with some, what I would call signature projects through very ambitious visions that various mayors have had through time. And every mayor has kind of done their part to try to bring it along. And when I was in office, we redid Laura Street to the tune of $1 million a block. We completely redid the street with streetscape and you know, reinvigorated the fountain, the Friendship Fountain on South Bank, and we completely replaced the South Bank Riverwalk that was wood and now it's concrete. So we have been able to make, I'd say, project-based improvement or progress. But I think we do have some governance issues around downtown we really need to talk about. It'd be nice if we had a downtown governance structure that had independent funding and could really embrace a long-range vision that could carry us through time. And I think, you know, we'll see that over time. But yeah, downtown has lagged, but from all indications, from what I see, and you guys would know firsthand, we are seeing a resurgence in activity. If you just look at the number of housing units that have been added just in the past few years, and the ones that are on the docket to be built, it's truly impressive. Brooklyn is on fire. You got a lot of housing on the South Bank. You've got a lot of what I'd say pockets of success in the urban core. So I'm more encouraged than I've ever been. Our goal has always been to have 10,000 units downtown. And we are steadily approaching that, because we think once you get to 10,000 units, then the dynamics start to change. You see a little more street life. The dry cleaner can stay in business, maybe the coffee shop, the sandwich shop, perhaps a grocer. You know, these folks can then have the viability of having folks around them to keep business going.